Hi guys, today we are going to discuss about a very important topic, that is the ULNAR paradox. It's a question of choice for examiners in both universities as well as in the entrance examination. So let us find out what's the matter. Generally, paradox means anything that contradicts a truth. If we find that contradiction correct, we call it as a paradox. We all know that whenever a nerve is injured at a proximal site, it will cause more damage to ourselves as compared to distal damage. Say a nerve comes out from the spinal cord and it goes to the arm, and then it goes to the forearm, and then it goes to the hand. If the nerve is injured somewhere around this arm region, so all the muscles which are supplied by this whole length of the nerve will be affected. But if the injury is somewhere around the wrist, so only this part of the nerve is injured. So only those muscles which are supplied by this part of the nerve, they are damaged. So obviously, if the nerve injury is proximal, it is causing more effect as compared to when it is injured distally. So that is the normal case. But the opposite thing happens in case of ulnar paradox. What happens in case of ulnar paradox? For that, we have to see this diagram. Say this. So in this diagram, we can see that the ulnar nerve is passing behind the medial epicondyle of the humerus, comes to the forearm, and it passes between the two heads of flexor carpi ulnaris. Okay, then it supplies a very important muscle of the hand called as of the forearm, that is the flexor digitorum profundus. That flexor digitorum profundus muscle is deeply placed. Profundus means deep, it is deeply placed, hence we call it flexor digitorum profundus. What is its function? We'll see that. Now this flexor digitorum profundus, that FDP muscle, is a hybrid muscle. It is supplied by two nerves. The medially it will be supplied by ulnar nerve, because the medial side is the ulnar side, and laterally it will be supplied by median nerve. So the medial side of this FDP, flexor digitorum profundus, is supplied by this ulnar nerve after passing through the two heads of flexor carpi ulnaris in the elbow region. That's fine. Now this nerve is coming down. You can see it is passing superficial to flexor retinaculum. That is itself another topic. And after passing superficial to the flexor retinaculum, it comes to the hand. In the hand, it supplies a huge number of muscles, huge intrinsic muscles of the hand and all that, but we are not concerned about that right now. The most important thing that we have to remember here is that it supplies both palmar interosseous and dorsal interosseous, and L3 and L4, these two lumbricals are supplied by ulnar nerve. You can see this diagram once again. Now let us see here. What is the function of dorsal interosseous, palmar interosseous, and lumbricals? The lumbricals, palmar interosseous, and dorsal interosseous, they have a combined effect of causing this. This means we can see this here are the metacarpals. The metacarpals are present over here, and the phalanges. They are the phalanges. So the function of these three will be flexion at the metacarpophalangeal joint. This is the flexion. And extension, this is the extension between the interphalangeal joints. So this is the function, a combined function of the intrinsic muscles of the hand involving the interosseous and the lumbricals. Now what happens when these intrinsic muscles are damaged due to ulnar nerve injury? What will happen? They will not be able to act properly, and this activity, this kind of movement, movement is lost. So what will happen? Something like this will happen. Why this will happen? Because whenever these intrinsic muscles of hand, they are lost, the long flexors and extensors of the arm and forearm, they will take over, and they will cause something like this kind of movement. That is, we can see a flexion at the interphalangeal joint. This is the flexion at the interphalangeal joint, and extension. You can see this is the extension, right? Extension at the metacarpophalangeal joint and flexion at the interphalangeal joint. That will occur. This is called clawing. But when we are discussing about ulnar nerve is the nerve of the medial side. So will ulnar nerve injury lead to whole damage of all muscles of the hand? No, only the muscles of the medial side. We have just discussed that L1, L2, they are not, L1, L2 means first and second lumbrical, they are not supplied by ulnar nerve, they are supplied by median nerve. So L1 and L2, they are spared. L3 and L4, these two are damaged. Correct? These two lumbricals are damaged along with dorsal interosseous and palmar interosseous. So what will happen? Whenever there is ulnar nerve injury, anywhere there is ulnar nerve injury, these two digits, the little finger and the ring finger, these two will be affected. We can see these two fingers, these two will be affected. So if these two are affected, what will happen? These two, they will be like this, because the L1 and L2 they are still working, the thinner muscles they are still working. So these three digits they are spared because they are supplied by muscles of median nerve, but these two digits they are affected. Now coming to what is the paradox, what actually is the paradox, that we have to keep an eye on. See, if the flexor digitorum profundus is, say the injury is somewhere around here or somewhere around here only, before somewhere around here, before supplying the flexor digitorum profundus, what will happen? Flexor digitorum profundus. Now the term means flexor digitorum profundus. The term flexor digitorum profundus means flexion of the digits. Flexion of the digits doesn't mean digits, it means the flexion of the phalanges. So flexion of the phalanges is done by flexor digitorum profundus. Now we can ask that there is another muscle, flexor digitorum superficialis. What is that function? What is the function of that muscle? Both are causing flexion, but the flexor digitorum profundus, and it causes flexion of the terminal phalanx also. We can see it causes the flexion of the terminal phalanx also, but the superficialis can't do that. So when the medial half of the flexor digitorum profundus is affected, also L3 and L4 they are also affected. Injury is around here, I have discussed, injury is somewhere around this region. Both that muscle, both the medial half of the flexor digitorum profundus is affected. That means this medial half, this is the medial side, no? So this medial half is affected, L3 and L4 they are affected, interossei they are affected. So what will happen? Will there be any kind of flexion at the metacarpophalangeal joint? No. Will there be extension at this interphalangeal joint? No. Why? Because the flexor digitorum superficialis muscle is still working, and that is supplied by median nerve. We are discussing about ulnar nerve injury. So that flexor digitorum superficialis will cause flexion at this joint, at this interphalangeal joint. There will be flexion at this interphalangeal joint. Correct. But the terminal phalanx will not be flexed. The terminal phalanx will not be flexed. Why? Because the flexion of terminal phalanx can only be done by flexor digitorum profundus, and that is already lost. Now, if the injury is here or somewhere around here, anything that is mentioned, the terminal phalanx will not be flexed, and hence this will look somewhere like this, something like this. Okay, I can show you from side, something like this. It will look like something like this. The terminal phalanx will not flex. We can see the terminal phalanx is not flexed yet. This joint is flexed, this one is flexed, this joint is not flexed. Now, if the injury is somewhere around the wrist, what will happen? This flexor digitorum profundus here is already supplied. If it is supplied, that means it will act. It will act means it will cause flexion of this terminal phalanx. So it will cause flexion of the terminal phalanx also. So now you can see initially it was like this, but now FDP is paired. So flexor digitorum profundus will act. It will cause more flexion, more prominent claw hand will be seen, more prominent. I can show you more prominent. You can see more prominent. Initially it was like this. Now it is more prominent. Initially it was like this. Now it is more prominent. So if the injury is distal, flexor digitorum profundus is damaged. If flexor digitorum profundus is damaged means the terminal phalanx will not flex. It is normal. Okay, it is okay like this. Okay? If the injury is proximal, FDP is lost, this terminal phalanx will not flex. So ulnar claw hand. But if the injury is distal, somewhere here, FDP is paired, FDP will cause flexion, and there will be more prominent ulnar claw hand. That means distal injury here is causing more prominent damage as compared to proximal injury. Generally, it should be what? Proximal injury should cause more damage, right? Distal injury should cause less damage, but here more prominence is seen when the damage is distal, and that is the paradox. So we can make it out. So we can for university examinations you can draw the diagram, and you can explain what is actually happening. The FDP is supplied, which is the FDP is already supplied when the injury is at the wrist, or distal injury. FDP is already supplied. If the FDP is supplied, that will cause flexion of the terminal phalanx. Flexion of the terminal phalanx will make more prominent claw hand. If the injury is distal, what will happen? If the injury is distal, FDP is paired, so there will be more prominent contraction. If the injury is proximal, FDP is not spared, so there will be ulnar claw hand, but not so prominent. If the injury is distal, then there will be FDP damage, flexor digital profundus damage. Medial have obviously we are discussing, so there will be more prominent ulnar claw hand, and that is the ulnar paradox. Thank you very much for watching.